Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day.
Well, welcome to the Nerd Herd podcast. Very clearly in North Carolina, the weather is breaking. I'm assuming, Amy.
You got it. I've got sunlight beaming into my eyeballs right now. I don't even know what to do.
It actually feels kind of warm in Cleveland, but really the important update is from Sarah. Sarah, you weren't on the podcast last week. You were still recovering from the winter storms in Austin. Can you give us an update? Are your pipes fixed? Is everything working?
Well, it's a very personal question, Greg.
Your water pipes. Is that still too personal?
Really, I mean, stay out of my business. You know what a private person I am. How I don't like to disclose anything about my. Oh wait, that's not me.
Oh wait, that's me.
So, sitting in my garage right now in a cardboard box is a brand new hot water heater. It's not. It's in a box, but it's here on the property, which is exciting. And I've been told that Tino, the plumber, will be here in the next couple of days. So that is an extremely exciting update. I have cold running water, but can't. Doing dishes is a pain in the ass.
Do you still have to boil water and stuff, or is that?
No, the boil water notice was lifted for us. I think it's been almost a week now. So I would say things are basically back to normal. We've been taking showers at a friendly neighbor's house, which I don't know how much they love us coming over there, but that's kind of saved our butts.
Why can't you just go to Eddie's house?
Well, that's a bit of a drive. I mean, the nice thing about this neighbor is that I can be there in 1 minute in my car or 8 minutes walk if I feel like taking a walk. So. All right. That's better than driving all the way up
and they don't harass her the whole time she's there. So
yeah.
Eddie, are you taking showers now?
Well, I never did before, but I do wash.
Notoriously unclean.
Yeah. We're all good here. We lucked out. The whole buy a bunch of shit just in case something breaks and then it doesn't break because you did that. We lucked out with that scenario. I had like $400 worth of plumbing crap arrive in the mail.
So,
just in case.
Right.
Well, I now have a set of crescent wrenches because I discovered I did not have a single one, and so that came from Amazon. And I have one of those water meter keys, so I can get in there and shut the water off really quickly if I need to in the future.
But you didn't have that before, which is part of the problem, right?
Yeah, but live and learn.
Right. Well, very good. Well, speaking of plumbing, there were some concerns that Clubhouse had some plumbing issues. And we've seen a number of reports. We've talked about this the last few weeks about some of the privacy issues around Clubhouse. And according to data protection experts, Clubhouse may lack some basic privacy safeguards needed for the EU's general data protection regulation. Now, what's really interesting, and the foundation for that is the fact that you have to share your contacts when you jump into Clubhouse. That's how you're able to share information or invite other people and connect with existing people you may know on Clubhouse. Now, it's really interesting. I sat in on the town hall today for Clubhouse, and there's been a lot of speculation about data leaks and who can access data and other things. And they were really clear that they don't record any of the sessions unless after the session has expired, and they only retain it if something has been flagged for a violation. And the founders were very, very clear. They do not share data with third parties or sell it with third parties, and they're going to make that more clear in their privacy disclosures. So kind of interesting because a lot of people have been speculating who can see, what can't they see, is it encrypted, is it not encrypted, and they're making it pretty clear they're not sharing any data.
But weren't the TOSs a little vague in terms of like they could eventually in the future potentially share data with to me, I saw an article out there that just spun it. It had a different tone. It was all about like, this stuff is vague. They collect this information. Yeah, they may not be using these recordings for anything at the moment, but still all your contacts and that information, like it wasn't kind of a whimsical, like, just share your contacts and make it easier. It's, you really can't do anything. And we may be able to share this with other partners in the future.
And Greg, question to that point, what happens to your contacts if you choose to leave? For those folks who had an allergy to these security concerns, what happens?
I have no idea. But I think, and I don't speak for Clubhouse, of course, I'm just, using this tool like everybody else is, I think that loose language that Ed was describing in the terms of service was kind of that very wide, lawyerly wiggle room with this stuff. But today in the town hall, they were very clear. They do not share any data, period.
Yeah, the one thing that I did want to mention was, about the contacts thing, like, and Amy said, what do you do if you want to delete it? Well, apparently there's no easy button for delete. You have to send an email, and then you don't really know if your social graph data is deleted. Once those connections, so Amy's connected to Ed, who just invited this person. Once that stuff gets integrated into their little whatever social graph, and they, understand those connections, untangling that is not an easy task. So I don't think it's one of those things where, I think it's hard to delete people and from Clubhouse. And I think also that social graph data is going to still continue to persist. So once you've given that information away, it's as good as gone.
Yep. And I just want to remind everybody, we're recording this in Clubhouse. We have a little bit of an audience here. If anybody wants to raise their hand and make a few comments, we just ask that you keep it short, brief, and we'll bounce you off the stage. When you're done, you can always raise your hand, come back up on. But we encourage people to jump in with their comments or questions. And Amy, one of the things that was interesting this week or a couple of weeks ago, is you popped up on my Signal app that you had finally taken the plunge. You talked about this on the podcast a few weeks ago. You actually took the plunge on Signal. Well,
I'm clearly public accountability is important to me. I forswore I would do so on this podcast. So somebody actually popped in the Signal and said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I told Greg I would be." What I learned is you were right. So let's go ahead and say that in public. Greg.
Wow. Can I make that my ringtone? say that with like a 1 second of airtime before and after. So, go ahead, say it again, Amy, but give it a pause so I can record this.
Greg, you were right.
Perfect. Okay.
Everybody, I hope that's the text chime. Everybody is on Signal that was on WhatsApp, and they were kind of like, "Oh, hey, you finally got over here." I'm like, "Why were you leaving me hanging on the uncomfortable WhatsApp side of the street?" But yeah, everybody is over there, and when anybody asked me, I told them Greg said so. That's why I was on Signal.
So what are your impressions? What are your impressions of Signal now that you've used it? Because there's a few people I chat with regularly, daily on Signal.
It is the same as any other. It's one more text platform, one more chat platform. I have no feelings about it. One way
I love that description. It's yet another pile of trash that I have to use to communicate with people.
Eddie, too far. It's another pile of trash where people can communicate.
I just went in there to take a look because I've never I have it, but I don't use it, and I just noticed that my priest has just joined Signal, so we've.
Wow.
Why don't you?
I don't know what that means, but I feel like that's a signifier of something.
Well,
that does feel like
what
a
is it?
signifier.
Confessions are supposed to be confidential, and when WhatsApp is, it's a big risk exposure.
Right. On Signal, you can just have those things time bound and disappear. So I don't know that I need to be doing anything where I need to have my chats be invisible, disappearing, etc. So yes, I don't know that I have a Signal strategy or great plans to use it other than to communicate with the folks who didn't feel comfortable on WhatsApp or want to shift over, which is fine. I'm fine with getting rid of WhatsApp and going to Signal. That's all fine.
That's good. So, Amy, I have a question for you. You've got a recently new job in the office of the CTO, Dick's Sporting Goods. Do you have an intern?
Do I have it? Well, only for the purpose of creating all our passwords, of course.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. You may want to get an intern because apparently interns are the ones to blame when bad passwords get created for security reasons. Current and former top executives at SolarWinds are blaming a company intern for a critical lapse in password security that apparently went undiagnosed for years. They used the password SolarWinds 123. And this was discovered in 2019, well before the breach. And they're kind of not blaming that specifically. They don't know if that was the entry point for the malware that infected SolarWinds. But this came out in congressional testimony this week. And a former CEO literally blamed an intern for bad passwords.
I was so gobsmacked by that. I thought, are you actually kidding me here? Well, and the other piece, not to, but anybody who's ever Googled Cisco 123, all the old Cisco types were like, yep, we're familiar with those factory preset passwords. It feels like this dirty, very well-known secret that is the password to try first.
Yeah, people did
break into something
stupid shit. Like, yes, of course, we all like what your password to your Linksys router was Linksys, and at one point in time, it was probably exposed the internet. Like, you're going to use the dog ate my homework excuse? Come on.
Yes, I just can't. I just can't even.
I think you guys are taking the wrong lesson away from this. I think this means we all get interns to cover our butts when things go bad. That's what I'm learning from this.
The audio quality this week was poor. It was the interns.
It was the intern's fault.
It was the intern. I want to say my intern failed to drip my faucets in advance of this storm, and that is the reason why I don't have water.
It's totally plausible.
Eddie's intern made some bad stock suggestions. Oh, wait, that was Greg.
Well, hold on. I did not. I told Ed. No, I warned Ed about that before. He did that on his own against my better judgment and warnings to him. Just for the record, I did not recommend that he buy GameStop at $412 a share.
No, he just said, here's a mirror with a line on it. I'm not responsible if you like. I mean, it's bad for your health.
Let's repeat this again, Ed. What was my text message to you when you asked me about it? What did I say?
Wait, hold on. We're going to sell those. Don't say what your text messages were.
Oh, that's right.
No, Greg did say, he said whatever it was at.
I said 412 sounds a little rich.
No, it was a 3 something. You said 380 or something. It sounds a little rich. And then I go in and my trade executes at 412.
Right. That's right. That's right.
It sounds like something. The devil's food cake looks a little rich too, right before you eat it. This is all very suspicious.
Yeah.
No, I do not put that on me, Amy. I'm not going to own that one. There's a lot of dumb stuff I'll own. Ed's stock purchases decisions are not one of them.
All right, so we need an intern. Obviously, we need a Nerd Herd podcast intern. So
maybe someone in the audience would like to volunteer.
Right.
Anybody want to be an intern?
Right. It doesn't pay, and we blame you for everything.
Yeah, everything.
Let's see.
I thought that was me.
Oh,
well, it is you until we get an intern.
But you can get drunk at the holiday party.
That's right. As the intern.
The booze will be on us.
I'm not seeing hands go up.
Yeah,
nobody wants to volunteer.
That's a way to clear the audience. Thanks, Amy. So this intern will be responsible for getting food for the potluck whenever it happens.
Oh, I can't wait for the potluck.
I went back because I was wondering. I knew that we had talked a lot about coronavirus in the weeks leading up to it really locking everything down in the U.S. I know that it was a subject for weeks for us on the show. And we also had we just passed our year mark and didn't really celebrate it. But anyway, I went back to listen to what we were talking about a year ago, and we were both acknowledging the existence of the coronavirus and simultaneously planning our
Yeah,
April potluck.
We were so convinced. I was convinced until the last minute that we'd get a handle on it. We'd get this thing stopped.
Hey, I just listened to the news, and our leader at the time said it was going to be gone. There was going to be no coronavirus in like a month or two. So I believed him. And that's.
Oh, wow. This is going to spiral into that text message I sent earlier this week where the whole Fire Fauci thing movement is underway.
Let's not.
Let's not open it up. But let's just say lots of people were wrong about this. How's that?
Okay.
Well, I think we should, yes, we got to reserve that for our paid content, which
That's
will be
right.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Let's go right to that, right? So this week, Twitter announced that there's paid super follows to let you charge for tweets.
Is that really what they're calling it?
That's what The Verge is calling it, super follows. Twitter announced a pair of big upcoming features today: the ability for users to charge their followers for access to additional content, and the ability to create and join groups based on specific interests. They're two of the more substantial changes to Twitter in a while, but they also fit snugly into models that have been popular and successful on other social platforms. I don't know what other social platforms are talking about, but the fact that you can charge people for it's kind of funny. So now what you're going to get is a whole thing of teaser tweets. So you buy the real tweet that you want.
It sounds like I'm looking at this
for Twitter.
Well, it looks like it really might be called super follow. I think it looks like it's based on whenever people have a tweet go viral and they're like, here's my SoundCloud or I'm on Patreon.
But what is going to stop? This seems like the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah,
it does.
What's going to stop people from screenshotting it and then sharing that, and then everybody can see the tweet? What's going to why? What
Sarah,
on earth?
People wouldn't do that for our quality content.
That would be a viation of Twitter services, and you would lose your account if you did.
Oh my God! But people are going to do it anyway, or they're just going to steal other people's tweets, and which has been going on since the beginning of Twitter. But the other thing is all anybody's ever asked me for. The thing that people say over and over again that they would actually consider paying for is an ad-free platform,
or an edit button.
Or an edit button. Twitter's never going to give us an edit button, but they absolutely, I could absolutely see a world in which people would be happy to subscribe for ad-free content. That is a proven model. And I would even consider it. But no, we have to. This is just. It makes me mad. Actually, it's such a bad idea.
Let's get the audience in here. I would love to know if anybody in the audience would ever pay any of us for any content in addition to what we. Anybody?
I see Mark Toomey in the audience. I almost want to drag Mark up on stage and ask him if he'd pay $5 a month just for DMs from Eddie.
He probably paid $5 a month to never have to listen to us again. I'd like to know which model would work better.
No, Sarah, I was going to say, I just realized where ERCOT, those 3 board members that left, where they got jobs at. And apparently it's Twitter.
Oh my gosh. The name is dumb. The idea is dumb. What's the second feature? It looks like they also announced a feature called Communities. Which is like Facebook groups. And that's going to be different than lists. So you can join affinity communities. And how would that be different than just creating a list and following a hashtag?
Twitter does it for you and curates it for you. I guess.
And it was the dumbest idea when they deprecated lists. They still deprecate it. Why don't they just use the tools they have? So we've got somebody on stage, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Is it Vong?
Close enough. I've been called worse. I am married, so it's okay.
Just say your name out loud so we know how to say it in the future.
Oh, no problem. It's pronounced Voong Fam. But nonetheless, I just wanted to say if Twitter's going to follow the OnlyFans model, I don't know how well that's going to work.
OnlyFans. That's exactly what it is. Oh, my God.
That is what it is. That is what it is.
Wow.
Thank you for putting that out there. Yeah.
So
they're doing everything to copy. They're even copying Clubhouse. So I don't know. and
Wow.
they already have their little stories. So Twitter's lost in their draft.
They're lost. Yeah, I mean that's a concise way to put it.
You know what? I would pay Eddie $5 to send me pictures of the shoes he's wearing.
Oh my god, too far.
He already sent them to me. Sorry,
It's
I
worse
have
than the
exclusive rights to
That's
those
worse than
pictures.
nursing homes for Amy.
Wow. We
For
could have
$5, we can send the radish pillow pictures.
we could have the Nerd Herd, like our private group message chats, snapshot, or we can just take snapshots of those and send those for $5 a month. I would do that. I'd sell all of us out for that.
Greg. Oh, it is OnlyFans for only tweets. It's terrible.
It's only tweets. Oh, that is awful.
Thank you for that comment. That was helpful. Though I don't feel like so are you willing to pay us to share more content or pay us to never share more content?
Oh, I'd throw you $1 or $2, I guess. Maybe buy you Starbucks. But then I'd feel dirty afterwards, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's no refunds. But the communities thing that they're doing with the list stuff, that bothers me too. Again, because they've already got a service that does that sort of. So I don't know. They got like a newsletter. I know they got a newsletter thing. If you go in there now, they've got you can create, and I don't know how it works, but they've give you an option of creating a newsletter where you can embed tweets and stuff in it and charge subscribers.
It's a huge challenge. There's no monetization for Twitter. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, are they the platform we love to hate? Because I would look to Sarah. Sarah, you might be our best social media historian here. Is it the platform that has endured most over time? Because we've seen so many, the rise and fall of so many different platforms, but Twitter's the one we complain about on Twitter, but it seems to have endured.
Well, I mean, it's a tie between Twitter and Facebook, right? Because didn't Facebook predate, or maybe it doesn't. Was Facebook in the dorms at Harvard before Twitter, before that South by Southwest, when they released the beta of Twitter?
You're the historian. You tell us.
God damn it. Don't do this to me.
As her intern, I'm Googling up a storm right now.
Yeah, we need. This is why we need the intern.
Amy.
Yeah.
They both persisted. Twitter, I guess you could make an argument that Twitter has kind of remained true to its original form, despite a lot of things. It is still pretty much what it was designed to be at the very beginning, except now, I mean, this sort of changes things. This paid model changes things. And the fact that they shut down their ecosystem and their API and all that other stuff. But I would say that Facebook has morphed more than Twitter. So in that sense, maybe Twitter has been more of a constant.
So Facebook, it looks like predates Twitter by at least 2 years, according to Wikipedia.
That's what I thought.
It is. I'm going to drop this on the show notes for future sharing on our OnlyTweets. We will share out a link to the Wikipedia that you could look up yourself, but we'll make it easier for you if you pay us $5. And
then what about Reddit? Is Reddit
let me
as a site? Yeah, look it up, Amy. Come on.
Intern Amy is on it.
Isn't that a movie?
Yeah.
That's on OnlyFans.
That's Reddit is 2005. So in between, or actually predating
Twitter.
Yeah,
Reddit I think Reddit counts.
Yeah, but this is a great thread. I recommend everybody go back because there's it launches. It's talking circa 1980 with BBS, and it takes us right on through things like 6degrees.com. Who remembers that?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
Oh, I was on 6 Degrees.
What is that?
Friendster, Orchid, the whole
all the stuff. Yep. Friendster came after. Yep. 6 Degrees was like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or 6 degrees.
Oh, I do remember that
first
now.
social graph.
Yeah.
But I mean, all that stuff, talking about things that have died, Greg, you didn't have us in the show notes, but I thought this week you chimed in on somebody's comments around Google killing off things and the risk for a Google Cloud Platform to go.
Yes, I got snarky with our friend Matt Broberg.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
It's from Matt.
No. It started from Simon, right? And I have mad respect for all the stuff that Simon does with mapping, but he's been like adamantly anti any other cloud besides AWS. So he does not miss an opportunity to shit on any Google any chance he gets. And I just believe, and people disagree with me on it, I just believe that if Google would get out of the cloud game now, they would end up collapsing into a Yahoo-like commodity. The value of Google would be diminished dramatically from
But haven't they already set like they've set the tone that it's permissible for them to do that and it's okay. I think even if they shut down their cloud, like if they shut down search, yes, but they're still keeping their core business alive. But I don't really see, like, Google is the one company that gets away with doing bad shit by shutting down services that people still use but don't make them any money, and they get away with it all the time.
Well,
all the time.
And to be fair, they still do it with Google Cloud. They deprecate services inside of Google Cloud and not make them backward compatible. And that's one thing that AWS gets mad props for. They're maniacal about backward compatibility. And Google so far has not proven that. And that's caused a lot of indigestion for people that jumped onto Google in early days. And now they've got to reconfigure massive reconfigurations in Google Cloud. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's painful. So there is that. There are elements inside of Google as far as how they're progressing. But the fact that Google, to claim that Google, I don't even think it's, I can't believe we're still debating this after 2 years. That was my comment to Matt, is that why are we still discussing this? It's not a thing until it's a thing, I guess. And is that a real reason to stay away from Google Cloud right now? I would argue it's not.
Yeah, I wish I felt more strongly about it. I just kind of see them as just yet another player, and with the cloud world, things just there's incremental improvements and things go away and come back. And as a person or a user or a customer, it's your responsibility to keep yourself somewhat isolated from like your power provider going down.
I would also argue that the marketplace definitely benefits from having more than one player on the field. So yes, the debate may churn on, but I think everybody benefits from having choice in that case in particular.
Absolutely.
Cloud monopoly would be pretty terrible.
It wasn't that long ago where people like Simon were arguing, and I'm not making this up, that businesses should go all in on one cloud. And that one cloud happened to be AWS, that they were so far ahead out of everybody else that why would you dip your toes in the water with another cloud provider? And look at what Azure's done in the last couple of years. They totally changed the game. Now they're miles behind AWS. Nobody's going to argue that. But Azure is a viable competitor to AWS now. And I don't think you can just dismiss that. And I think just the nature of businesses, forget about cloud services. Look at, who would have thought that GE would have diminished to the amount that they have? Businesses come and go. We see these trends about digital transformations and businesses, the top 100 businesses 50 years ago, how many, these stupid infographics talk about like how there's only 20 left, but these things evolve, and AWS and Amazon is going to continue to have competition, and they're innovating in a way that keeps them ahead of their competition right now. But that doesn't mean the competition is going to go away. Well,
right. It's the danger of the too big to fail. We've heard that phrase, and that phrase rings in infamy for a reason, right? You can't claim to be too big to fail. And even if a business themselves wants to sit on a single cloud, that's fine. But I would hate there to be a world where that's the only cloud there was to choose from. So if they want to be single cloud, great. Like if a business is of a size that they want to be all in on a single cloud platform, sure. There's no law that says you have to be on multiple. But if they are completely frustrated I would always want them to be able to choose somebody else.
And I'm going to screw up your name again, but I'll give it another shot.
That's okay.
Okay.
Greg, well, what's odd about this cloud conversation is that everyone's talking about API first, 12-factor app, how cloud native is supposed to be ubiquitous, how you're supposed to be able to have the mobility between the clouds. So when, remember the contribution of Kubernetes, that little thing that's still growing?
Yeah.
That came from Google, right? So it's not like you can't refactor your application in another cloud if you're API first. So I'm not sure why they would need to deprecate otherwise than not monetizing something. So that's my comment about that.
I totally agree. Ed's going to disagree with you anyway, aren't you, Ed?
No. I think the point. So it's a little bit more nuanced, but I think the general point I completely agree with. The reason why it's a little bit more nuanced is that no cloud provider wants to be a commodity, and they don't want to be commoditized. So they'll continue to do things that you can only do on their platform that are, less universal, and that's where the cloud providers try to differentiate themselves. So I think it's like we want to believe that it's an open playground, and you can take your toys and go to another one if you want to. The reality is making that moves a little bit tougher, and I think customers making that decision's a little bit tougher. But I see there are more companies that I've seen over the last couple of years that are willing to go all in instead of do the work to make sure that they can get to that promise of being able to go from one place to another. So it's like everybody says, I don't want to be locked in, and then they're like, where are the handcuffs? Just show me the way. Like, put them on.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're saying because, for example, S3 is now the leading cloud object store, but there are compatible S3 compatible cloud object stores that are 1/3 the cost. So
absolutely.
And so now this is going to be like Amy's point of availability zone, and making sure there's resilience in your cloud architecture to survive. Like a Texas freezing, those type of situations. So there's a lot of business nuance to the technology chosen, and 100% on that. So it's not easy.
No, it's not. If I could, Amy, Eddie, and Sarah, can you indulge me to do a cheap plug for something I'm doing this week? Is this a safe place to do that, or should I check it?
Should we charge people $5?
I know. I was going to say.
Their teaser.
All right.
I'll allow it, Craig.
Go for it, Greg.
So yeah, I'll make a contribution to Eddie's swear jar for this one. So I'm going to be moderating a fight of serverless versus containers. This is on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Feel free to join us. We're also going to be in Clubhouse at 10 a.m. Pacific. To extend the conversation of serverless versus containers, Force Brazil, AWS
Hold on.
serverless.
Is this your day job? Let's clarify. You jumped in without explaining.
Oh yeah.
Is this a NetApps thing?
It is a NetApp hosted, but it's not like a net. We've got a point of view on this, but this is a community roundtable. So all sides are welcome into the conversation, and we'll be extending this into Clubhouse. There's a cloud club that has 2.7 thousand followers or something on it. So we're going to be extending the conversation after that. So people are free to join. We'll be talking containers versus serverless. So there's that cheap plug.
I didn't know there was a cloud club. I have to tell you, another cheap plug for other friends of the podcast. I've been taking my daughter to a lot of soccer practices lately, and I've been catching up on Cloudcast, and they're doing some really interesting stuff. So I am curious what's happening in the cloud club. I'll have to go check that out.
No, yeah, go look it out. It's the Cloud Club, and so we're going to be doing it with them. They extended the conversation afterwards. I imagine it'll go on for a couple hours on Tuesday. So there's that. But it's a great conversation to have. And it's funny because you would think that of all the industry debates, serverless versus containers would have been kind of settled by now. But I've been on a number of cloud conversations here in Clubhouse, and it's still a point of contention. and conversation. And I don't think it's a settled matter. And not that we're going to settle it out of this conversation, but I think there's more options on the table than there were maybe a couple of years ago when this
well, my question about that is, and I have so much ignorance about this topic in general, so forgive me, but are there use cases where serverless makes more sense than containers, or is it truly a versus conversation?
So I will tell you, it doesn't help people digest this, but it's always about the right tool for the right job. And I would argue there are use cases where you'd want serverless, and there's use cases where you'd want containers. There's also cost considerations, there's scaling considerations. It's not like not all environments and requirements are equal, and that's why it's not a black and white answer. Typically,
it's but like for app development. I mean, is that all we're talking about here, or what are the use cases? Tell me more.
So Eddie, were you going to say something? You just unmuted.
No, you can go ahead.
So yes, there's application deployment. You know, how you build on premises, how you deploy to the cloud, how the data management works. There's a lot more hands-on with containers, especially from a data management perspective, and how you're migrating, protecting, backing up that data. There's issues with persistent storage that are still there. It's still a challenge. So, but I would argue there's also, that's offset by the cost, the ease of use. You pay for that. There's a premium that you're paying for all of that data management automatically with serverless. So it depends on what level of control that you want. Do you want to turn all the knobs with containers, or do you just want to let serverless drive it for you? Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, the differentiator for me. So, I mean, if you think about serverless is all about sticking. You could call it a function, a block of code or a program or whatever, and you throw it out there into whatever serverless platform you're using, and you say, go run when you get a request, or run a little bit and then make sure that you can go ahead and spin up more of these functions similar to containers, but it's more bite-sized, right? Where Greg was talking about, you don't have all the knobs to tune in your Java runtime or your Node.js runtime. You're like, here's your Java or Node code, and just go run this when you need to. The interesting thing that's happening is that there's a little bit of blurring of the line. So there's a project called Knative where serverless is actually being executed inside of containers, and you have a little bit more control. So you've got, like, the lines are blurring, but if you think about it, serverless is a lot about paying every time something executes, or for the amount of time something needs to sit out there and hang out and service user request, whereas a container is generally running all the time. And you can have elasticity where more containers get spun up to deal with load, and then they shrink back down. Serverless is very much the same way. I don't, going back to what Greg was saying, though, I think it is a right tool for the right job. I think where it's like there's a big overlap, and the only time where things become really clear cut is when you say don't try to throw too much into serverless, because then it ends up running and operating like a container. If it's going to sit out there and persist forever, and it's a lot of code, and they need to have lots of instances spun up behind a load balancer, you basically just spun up a container. And so, like, I don't think the argument will ever be solved, though, because as we've seen with just about everything, you guys remember when Cloud Foundry was out, it was advertised as, go throw your application up there. The data storage is kind of handled for you. Routing, load balancing, all that stuff is handled for you. And then people were like, we don't have enough control. So then they went over to containers, and they're like, we have all this control, but this shit is hard to work with. Oh, well, we're going to make containers like work a little bit like Cloud Foundry did. So it just kind of mishes and mashes. And I think a lot of it turns into religious debates about, what camp you sit in. But the reality is there's a ton of overlap, and you can accomplish the same goals with the same products. So use whatever you like to use. Just don't try to mangle it to the point where you're doing yourself a disservice by being too loyal to a particular technology.
And you'll hear it in the debate on Tuesday, but Forrest is pretty adamant about abstracting what you can and focus on the mission of what your business is, rather than having to focus on tuning the knobs. So it's a very interesting debate. It really is. And you'll hear both sides of the story very clearly on Tuesday. So
and
I'm excited about it.
want to jump in and say we've been doing some work around Myers-Briggs at work, and one of the things that really struck me is people who enjoy details versus people who look to the horizon and see big picture. And while you were having this debate, I'm struck by people's opinions will differ whether they're the person who thinks this is a good idea or has to do the work on said good idea.
Right.
So I look forward to hearing that resolution as well.
So that's one angle on it, but there is a cost optimization piece of this too, right? And so those levels of abstraction, no matter what it is, if it's serverless, containers, virtualization, there's always a cost that comes with that. So it just depends how granular you want to be with it, like you said, Amy. So,
but like Wong brought up the great example of the fact that S3 storage is 3x the price of some of its competitors. And I think if you have you apply the same lens to serverless, I think that in containers, there are going to be people that are bought into one camp or another, and they're just going to suck it up and do it. Amy, your Myers-Briggs thing is very interesting because, I wonder how many times people walk in and they make these business decisions that affect kind of long-term horizon in terms of a company being competitive, the technology platforms that they pick, and a lot of it's just based on personality and which way, would decisions go if you wanted a specific type of outcome. I don't know. I'm getting a little Minority Report here, but if I'm sitting there thinking people that I want to hire, I want them to be practical and looking at the long-term horizon and not be the ones that are sitting there kind of married to a particular technology. So I would want to hire people that I'm like, are you an ENFP or an ISTJ? Let me know in your resume. Can I screen for that? Is that
my God,
valid question?
You're my worst nightmare. I hate Myers-Briggs with a burning passion.
I kind of do too.
I'm not saying Myers-Briggs is the answer, but I'm saying that if there is a correlation between the types of personalities that people get stuck in the detail and become married to something. And I don't know, my point is I would love to be able to make sure that when I team up with people to do something, that they're not the kind of people who are going to be I'm married to a technology.
Well, you always want,
whatever.
that's sort of basic team structure, right? You always, and I'm sure Amy, I'm truly not trying to throw Myers-Briggs totally under the bus. The spirit of it is to understand each other's kind of strengths and weaknesses and where people lean and how they view the world. And what you always want, of course, is a team of people that have variety in those things, so that you're not all blind to any one particular thing, and so that you have a diversity of thought and opinion, and that is always going to get you to the best outcome. But it's hard to choose people because we're biased. When we are choosing people, we want to choose people who are like ourselves, because those are the people that we gravitate towards. So it's always a tricky thing in hiring, but
that's exactly it. And for some fun pop culture, I recommend people take a look at the numeral 16personalities.com. It's a very pop culture kind of take on it, but one of the fun parts they do is sort celebrities or people that you could recognize into the different types. So it gives you an idea of who might be what type. And to Sarah's point, it's supposed to be, there is no wrong answer, but balance in the force. And some of it has been very, very useful that way, in terms of recognizing that people do things that you really genuinely think are the quote unquote right way of doing things, which is in some ways, I think, what you're saying, Eddie. And they're just, we're all guilty of it, right? Completely blind to the fact there is 100% opposite way of thinking about it. Which for me is I am a horizon person. Like, I get excited about possibility, and it scares the pants off of people who are super detail oriented, and that makes them uncomfortable.
So the site you mentioned, what was it again? 16.
It's called the numeral 16personalities.com.
Is that Sarah's big app of the week?
So does that
probably the one she'd want to set on fire for the week. They're probably
integrates via API to analyze the social patterns. So you just have that personality. So when you're talking to somebody in chat, it'll flag it in the side and it'll say this person's personality is this, and that way you know how to talk to them better to get your desired outcome. That exists, right, Sarah?
That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
Sarah,
I've got my intern working on that right now.
which is me, so I can say no.
Amy, get on it.
Now, Sarah, do you have a big app of the week?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I forgot about my job of getting a big app of the week, but
blame it on the intern. Blame it on the intern.
I'm blaming it on the intern.
That was coming. Yeah,
I'm blaming it on the ice storm. But I'll say that I quickly looked to see what my most recent app downloads were, which triggered a memory that I got a message from Google Voice that I had to use my phone number or they would kick me out, and so I went in there and sent a text message to myself using my Google Voice number. But in the process of doing all of that, I downloaded the Google Voice app, which I never had on my phone before, on my iPhone, of course, because I don't have an Android. And I spent a little time going down memory lane and looking at all of these text messages from a gazillion years ago when I used to use that number much more frequently. So
when we used to use it.
Any new numbers or any new messages pop in there that you just didn't respond to because you hadn't used the app?
What's funny about it is I have a couple of relatives who never really got the memo that that number was not the best for me and that they did not need to use it and they could just use they've gotten it on a contact card or you know how that happens sometimes. And so I have a couple of relatives who keep defaulting to that number, and our phone call quality is always really bad, and I can never figure out why. And now I know. So it's triggered the, because, it shows you also your telephone call history. And when calls come through from those people on my iPhone, I don't know that they're necessarily know that they're calling.
Oh, so you have it rolling over to your primary.
Right. So it just reminded me, or I now made a mental note to next time my Aunt Jackie calls me from Chicago, I will tell her to delete this number from her phone and only call me on the 512.
Did I mention RoboKiller to you guys? Did I ever say that was? I did.
Oh, we have a bonus app of the week?
Well, so sorry to interrupt, Sarah, but I've been using I had some other spam caller blocker thing, and then I got RoboKiller, and they were like, hey, if you pay, I don't know what it was, like $30 a year, then you can also do call screening. What I've found out, though, is that the call screening, you basically redirect your number. And if it's not recognized, the app forwards the call to that number for screening. If you decide to pick it up, it sounds like you're talking to somebody who's, 20 years ago was on the other side of the world. Like there's a 2-second delay as you're trying to have this conversation. So while I would say we could have a second app of the week, which is RoboKiller, which does a really good job of screening phone calls, when you forget that you told somebody to call you and you don't have their number in and you pick up the call, it's like you can't have a conversation with them. You might as well just hang up and call them back.
Does the feature of just saying ignore all numbers that aren't in my phone not work for you, Eddie? Because I do that, and then if it turns out to be something that I need to get back to, they'll leave me a message. And if not, I just ignore it as spam.
There's been enough times where I don't like to do that because when I'm having somebody call me about a service, it'll leave a number there and sometimes the person will hang up or they won't leave a return call number. So It's just, I'm kind of nervous about missing, certain phone calls. Like when I ordered those plumbing things, the place called and I couldn't tell who it was at first. And then RoboKiller was like, oh, it's this place. And I'm like, shit, I need to answer that because it's Friday, end of day. They're probably calling me about my order. If I don't, it was probably at like 4:45 in the afternoon. So I didn't want to miss an opportunity to be like, yeah. And it turned out they didn't have one thing in stock and they said, do you want us to ship you the rest? And I had to patiently between the 2-second Edna, who's calling your Google Voice number, it's very much the same experience.
So before she became Edna the Living Urn. So I love that that's the name we all appreciate.
Yes.
Oh, no.
And I want to invite anybody in our audience that wants to jump up on stage and raise a topic or a question or a comment about what we've already talked. Please just raise your hand. And we'll add you,
everybody today.
Yeah, it will add you to the stage. One app you may not want to get is the LastPass.
LastPass.
Yes.
I'm watching this closely because I have used LastPass.
Yes, a security researcher recommends against LastPass after detailing 7 trackers on it. German InfoSec hunter Mike, I'm going to mess up his name, Cookets? It's a story. I have no idea.
My inner Beavis and my inner Butthead just went off, but go ahead.
The story's in the Register, so if you want to see more, you read it there. But he spotted LastPass trackers in analysis that he produced. And they're a nonprofit organization, so it doesn't seem like they've got a stake on this. Now, LastPass, to their credit, says we do some tracking. This is what every vendor says, right? For them to be able to assess aggregate statistic data about how the app is being used. And it helps them improve and optimize the product. But that's what everybody says, right? When they get questioned about why are you tracking these activities. So I guess LastPass would be our non-app of the week.
Don't use.
Un-app of the week.
Well, I hope they don't come for 1Password, because that's what I use, and I really like it.
First they came for my LastPass, then they came for my 1Password.
I know, I'm saying.
And here's my, as you talk about the robocall, the robokiller, et cetera, here's my tip of the week. If you haven't checked your voicemail, because how many of us are guilty of letting voicemails pile up and pile up, eventually the mailbox gets full and you need to delete some. So if you haven't had that active hygiene while we're all having various people call.
No, Amy, you don't understand. Let it fill up and then no one can leave you a message. That's the goal.
That is the problem is when your daughter's third soccer coach calls to tell you they have to text you another way because they can't leave you a voicemail. That's the goal. This is what I'm saying.
You're not following Sarah's workflow here.
I'm just the intern.
You're not the intern, but we do have to find an intern.
We're gonna need to work on that. Who you don't have to be the intern if you volunteer. Somebody who is in that room that wants to come and give us a comment. You will be recorded. That's the only downside, but you won't be the intern. We promise.
And the people we want to hear from, none of them will raise their hand. They'll wait until we say, and we're done recording, and then
boom,
come up and they're like, hey, yeah. You're not recording my shit, but here's my 2 cents on this.
They're going to sell it on super Twitter or whatever.
Yeah. So why don't we go ahead, we'll wrap up, and we'll stay online here in Clubhouse and continue the conversation with anybody that wants to continue the conversation. Eddie, how can people stalk us on the Twitters?
Oh, at nerd_herd_pod.
Nailed it. Amy, how can people leave 5-star reviews for us?
Well, even if you don't care for Apple iTunes, that is the place to go leave a 5-star review. And also, make sure you write some comments that we'll read on air, good, bad, or ugly. Preference for 5 stars. And tell a friend. Do tell a friend that this is a show about nothing, but it's a lot of fun to talk about nothing.
It is about nothing. And Sarah, how can people talk about nothing in text format if they don't want to have a conversation with us in Clubhouse?
They can come to our Slack channel, which is bit.ly/nerdherdpod if you want the kind of portal to come on in and register, and we will embrace you there.
Yes. And I haven't been in there.
It's making our $5 be real questionable. But yeah.
Yeah. It's tough to add value when we try to make ourselves available everywhere, I guess.
I guess.
We're gonna fix our model. To join the Slack channel, it's gonna cost you $5 a month. Then we'll see what happens. Nobody will show up.
Otherwise, we're gonna deprecate like Google.
Yeah, we'll just deprecate all over the place. All right. On that note, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to you joining us next week on Clubhouse. Again, have a good week.
Bye.
See ya.